Today we are going to have a conference about the old Mass and the new Mass. We are going to basically discuss about the Mass. But before we start the conference proper, I want to read the Gospel of today, because the Gospel of today relates to what we are doing today. At that time, the Gospel is from St. Matthew. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in the clothing of sheep, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. By their fruit you shall know them. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruits, and the evil tree bringeth forth evil fruits. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruits, neither can an evil tree bring forth good fruits. Every tree that bringeth not good fruits shall be cut down and shall be cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits you shall know them. Not everyone that said to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father who is in heaven, he shall enter into the kingdom of heaven." So we can see that it is a coincidence that the Gospel of today, being the seventh Sunday after Pentecost, the seventh Gospel of Pentecost is relating to what we are doing today. The old Mass is a good fruit that brings us forth, good tree that brings us forth good fruit. But the new Mass is an evil tree that brings forth bad fruits. Because you know that the wolves, they enter the church in what we call sheep clothing. Now, actually, the thing that led to the renewal, there was actually a new renewal that needed to come for the modern world as a result of the evils of French Revolution. People gradually were swallowing the Enlightenment era, which happened in the 17th century. Then the French Revolution of the 19th century, they swallowed in a lot of errors already. Then Dom Berenger, a French person, brought what we call the liturgical movement in the mid-19th century, around the 1850s or thereabouts. He brought that liturgical movement in order to reform something, not revolution per se like Vatican II do, just to reform to a little bit of liturgical life about the priests and the lay faithful. A good reform based on sound Catholic principles. That was the head of the liturgical movement. A good reform based on sound Catholic principles. But along the line, some people hijacked it. You remember Pope Leo XIII? The devil went to meet God in the vision he saw and said, "I'm going to destroy your church." God said, "No possible." He said, "Give me only 100 years." And he did destroy the church. Now, these things this hijacking of the liturgical movement was happening within the same time that the vision was given to Pope Leo XIII about what the destruction of the church. If you look at it now, from 1850 to 1950s to 1960s, exactly 100 years. So the Perites, those liturgical experts, those wolves in sheep clothing, went ahead to hijack this liturgical movement and started bringing in foreign ideas about making the altar look like a table. The altar is a supper. You have to meet everything. You have to do with sacrifice. The Mass is not a sacrifice. It's the people's assembly. People have to participate actively. They have to be involved. You have to respond to everything. All those type of things. Those are the kind of things they brought in. Pope Leo XIII, Pope St. Pius X put them at head, pushed them out. But in the 1930s, there was a relapse. There was no vigilance. During the time of Pius, even from Benedict XV, when we now enter into Pius XI, there was hardly any vigilance. So they crept in again. Remember when I was talking about what they call it, outer vendita? That in the 1930s or thereabout, that Pope Pius XI called a council of 30 elders, an inner caucus meeting of 30 cardinals, and asked them about the timeliness of creating an ecumenical council. They warned against it because of people already. There was already people trying to hijack Catholic doctrine, and they are looking for that council as a means to do that. So they relax in vigilance, because it's when the shepherds go to sleep, go to slumber, that the devil captures us. Especially when we lose our vigilance. Not just in the Catholic Church, in our family, if we lose vigilance over our children, we lose it all. So it is a loss of vigilance after Pope St. Pius X died that all these things happen. He said it as a prophecy. I know that once I'm dead, they will all come back. St. Pius X. So the thing about the old Mass is that the law of prayer was actually changed. And because of the law of prayer being changed, the law of belief changed. Lex orandi, lex credendi. Liturgy is essentially, or of its nature, an expression of dogma, so much so that any religious society de facto holds the same faith and doctrine that its liturgy clearly expresses. That's by the 19th century canonist Brooks' treatise on liturgical law. It simply means whatever you profess, whatever you pray is what you are going to profess. If I am praying facing God, that means I'm professing my belief in God. If I back myself to God, that means I don't want to have anything to do with God anymore. If in my prayer I always talk about only something like thanksgiving, praise, I don't talk about penance, I don't talk about sacrifice, that means I've deleted the idea of sacrifice and penance from my mind. And I want to believe like others that Christ has died once and for all. He has suffered. I don't need to suffer anymore. Suffering is not for me. But what they did is that this liturgical expert, the Puritans, they were so intelligent that they went ahead to attack the Mass to remove everything about sacrifice. And the offertory, they put the Jewish prayer for me and remove the offertory prayer that talked about sacrifice. The Sucipe Sancte Trinitas. That's after the priest finished offering the bread and offering the wine. Then the next thing he do in spiritual humanitatis. Then he will do Veni Sanctificatorum. But then after he washes and then he come back to the altar and then do Sucipe Sancte Trinitas. It talks about everything about sacrifice. But they removed it and degraded it in form of a meal. That the Mass is a meal. Have we forgot? We should try and remember that the Lutherans have a way, did that. They talk about meal, they talk about supper. So they did that along the Jewish line. So the Lutherans were the main people that had the mind of Luther, were the main people that changed the Mass during the Second Vatican Council. Then the liturgical movement in the mid-19th century initially argues could Catholic and convent, but were later hijacked by the modernists in the 19th century. So now the liturgical movements of the 19th century, like I mentioned before, were very instrumental in bringing about what we call a reform, but it was hijacked by modernists. It was hijacked by the ravenous wolves. The wolves in sheep clothing. Joseph Jockman in 1940 and Louis Boyer in 1950 were key figures in the critical treatment of the traditional liturgy. Their pre-Vatican II writings not only furnished the underlying ideology for the creation of the new Mass, but also greatly influenced the ideas of Montini, later called deceased, and on the liturgy. These same two men were directly involved in formulating the Novus Ordo Missae for Paul deceased. Louis Boyer, Joseph Jockman. Louis Boyer is a French person. Joseph Jockman is what? German person. Does it make sense to us? I hope it makes sense to us. Yes. The Germans are the Lutherans. Yes. They are always the Germans. Even there is a kind of infection from Martin Luther that even though the Catholic Church was still in Germany, the ideas of Luther kept creeping in. They kept fighting it. The German Episcopal Conference, that the Council of Bishops in Germany, have been fighting Lutheran ideas for years, for hundreds of years, not thousands of years, because it's 500 years ago. Hundreds of years they've been fighting it. So there is every opportunity for one or two priests, even within Catholic Church, to still espouse Lutheran ideas. So Jungmann was from Germany. He's a Catholic priest from Germany. He was ordained in 1930s or so. Then what was his name? Louis Boyer was ordained in the 1930s or thereabouts. But first of all, he was a Protestant. I'll talk about it later. He was a Protestant, a Lutheran. And all of a sudden, he converted. He studied everything about Lutheran, theology of Luther and everything. Very an expert in it. All of a sudden, he converted and was ordained in 1937 or thereabout. Either 1937 or 1938. He was ordained a Catholic priest. And he started bringing his information about the table, the people have to participate at the altar of the Lord. You understand? It's not a sacrifice. He hated the idea of the real presence. And he brought other presences, other real presences to replace the real presence itself, transubstantiation. So, one thing about you should know about Jungmann. One thing we know about Jungmann being a German is because of the Lutheran ideas. Then Louis Boyer being a French person. All those people, they are always imbued with what we call the French revolutionary ideas. So the French revolutionary ideas and then the Lutheran ideas of those two men came to play. The French revolutionary idea of equality, fraternity, everything had to do with democracy. You know that, like I said last time, that the Vatican II was a French revolution in the Catholic Church. The 1789 in the Catholic Church is the Vatican II. That's the French Revolution. So Don Lambert's building, 1884 to 1960, first used the liturgy as a means to form the laity for social action, then as a tool to promote ecumenism. That Don Lambert's building, a monk for that matter, an abbot, he brought about using the liturgy to make the what they call it, that the lay people have to participate, they have to be active, they have to be a social action, they have to be a ecumenism, you have to find a way of being at peace with the Protestants. They are our brothers and sisters. They are not enemies to each other. They are not normal. We should not stop regarding them as our enemies. But the Protestants are enemies to the Catholic religion. They are our enemies. But we love them and do good to them by telling them the truth. That's what our Lord Jesus said. Love your enemies and do good to them. Tell them the truth, the good for their souls. Tell them the truth. Pray for their conversion. Don't go and fraternize with them. Ecumenism. Let's come together. Let's talk. If you keep talking with somebody who has a debased theological system, gradually you will end up being influenced by their thoughts. Unless you tell them the truth and hammer the truth to them, and find a way of not listening to their garbage. Because in as much as faith comes by hearing, when we want to be imbued with error, we will keep going to places where errors are being used. That's why we are advised to stop going to the new mass, not just the Lord. Even the preaching is imbued with errors. Even if you think you can, if you go there, Father will tell you something before you keep telling you something before you know it is only part of you. So that's why there's nothing like fraternity with the Protestants. That's what they call fraternity, ecumenism, all isms like that. So they said the man should be a kind of social action to bring about ecumenism between Catholics and Protestants and so on and so forth. That's what Don Lambert's body was talking about. Then his ecumenical initiatives were condemned in the 1928 encyclical Motonem Animus. Upon 1928 encyclical Motonem Animus condemned ecumenism in its entirety. It was actually written by Pope Pius XI of venerable memory. He wrote that book. Of course, one of his encyclicals is here. He goes against modernism, goes against modern honors. You see papal documents. Now, in this book, you will see where not just this Pope, even Leo XIII gave his own documents too, down to Pius XII, Mediator Dei, and what they call it again. We have a popular one we call Patriciani Dominici Gregis of Pope St. Pius X in the 1906 or thereabouts. Those are the papal documents and encyclicals that they use to condemn modernism. Then, Then, but he continued to promote, after being condemned of his error, that the community being condemned in this encyclical of Pius XI, he continued to promote his ideas through priest retreats, conducted in secret for those in agreement with his ideas.
This is Lambert.
Yes. And one very funny thing we should remember, one funny thing that comes to our mind, which is quite unfortunate, is that Bellador said in the 1930s, Bellador, the communist that converted back to the Catholic Church under Archbishop regime, she renounced her first ideas and she was no longer a communist. He said in the 1930s, does it make sense now? 1928, 1930s. In the 1930s, that she recruited 1,100 men and sent them to the seminaries. Now infiltrated the Catholic Church. Most of those 1,100 men were already bishop and cardinal at the time she converted. Those are the ones that infiltrated. Those are the ones she sent to. There were others that have been operating since, but those are the ones she formed herself and sent. She had the power to send, but she converted. No matter how evil someone is, if the person converts, the person will go to heaven, of course. The person will save his soul. Even Pope Francis can convert and he will go to heaven. So we should not lose hope. But in case he doesn't convert, all the preaching and all the prayers we give for him will go against him when he goes to hell. He doesn't. But that's the fact. So, but he continued to promote his ideas through priest retreat, conducting secret for those in agreement with his ideas. Through publications and through a liturgical study center, Godwin was a friend to Angela Roncalli. You remember one very funny thing about it? I think initially I mentioned that the idea of Joseph Jogman and the ideas of what they call it, Louis Boyer influenced Montini, Paul VI.
Paul VI Montini.
Good. Roncalli, John the 23rd, Dom Bode, the monk that talked about ecumenism. Very good friend of him. Do you understand now? So they were influenced by ideas of people who are enemies of the church. Both Paul VI and that's Montini and what they call John the 23rd. So that's Angelo. That's the name he was answering before he answered the name as a pope. Yeah. During his final illness, he predicts if they elect Roncalli, that if they elect Pope John the 23rd, he will be capable of calling a council and canonizing ecumenism. Everything will be saved. I believe we have a good chance. Once they elect him, he knows that Roncalli being imbued with their ideas. Yeah. Once they elect him, he will easily call a council. Because he knew that Roncalli knows that some of their men are already in the Vatican. They knew. See, Pope St. Pius X did a lot for the Catholic Church. He knew he not only with what he forcefully was very aggressive towards what them is. He pushed them away, excommunicated them. If a bishop will come and start doing this thing, he told him, he removed it. He told the bishop to kneel down. He knelt down. The bishop knelt down, was greeting him for an hour or more than an hour. He didn't answer the bishop. I be a cardinal, he didn't answer. He left him there for more than 1 hour. You know, normally if you greet a pope, pope will give you sign for the land. Yes. He didn't answer him. Up to after 1 hour, he removed his sucheta, removed it from his head, and sent him away from his office. There's no need to talk to him because he's a modernist. Yes. He embarrassed him and sent him away. That's Pope St. Pius X. Because of the modernists were so afraid. Yes. He not only did it. One thing we have to understand, he not only naturally did it, he was supernatural powerful because he saw the future. They saw the grace of God flowing from him because he was a saint, even a living saint. Yes. Cardinal Mary de Val confirmed this many times. Cardinal Mary de Val, after Pope St. Pius X died, that Cardinal Mary, the Secretary of State during Pope St. Pius X, confirmed it that he saw Pope St. Pius X saw his soul and saw the soul of one woman and said it's only him that is close friend and that other woman in the crowd that gained plenary indulgence. Many people don't gain plenary indulgence because they are not in the right. Even if they go to confession, they will commit 1 or 2 sins even before communion because you have to be free from every attachment to sin. So it's only Cardinal Mary de Val and one elderly woman in the crowd that received that plenary indulgence that she gave upon everybody that went for confession. It's only the two of them and he saw the future. He saw what was going to happen to the mass. That is why he was very strict. pursuing modernism, removing them from the seminary lecturers that had modernist guy, remove them from Catholic universities and seminaries. If you hear a modernist, he not only remove you, he will excommunicate you. They were shivering. The modernists were praying for him to die at all costs. When he died, Benedict XV was the peace kind of person. He allowed some things. The Pius XI didn't even help. To a major extent, like I said, Mortalian Animals, it condemned ecumenism. But he didn't do much. He was not as hammering as Pope St. Pius Pent. Was not as hammering as him. He did not do a serious work like he did. Then during his final he predicted if the election everything will be saved. So now we can see that Pope John, we can actually see that Pope John the 23rd was imbued with modernist and heretical ideas. And many people are saying that he's a Freemason. He's a Freemason. It's possible that he is, but I'm not sure. You understand? But some people are suggesting that he's a Freemason. But in any case, let's not forget that during the Second Vatican Council, he sent one of his legates to the Orthodox Church in Russia. They said that Pope John the 23rd has agreed that the Second Vatican Council will not condemn ecumenism. Will not condemn ecumenism. Will not condemn it. You understand? He agreed with them. He will not condemn the Orthodox. Will not condemn the ecumenism. That will be the only thing that will help them. That will make them to come. And he agreed. That's the Vatican-Moscow agreement. That's Vatican and then Moscow, where Russia. They had that agreement. So somebody that had this kind of government, it's possible that he was actually a Freemason because he was already imbued with communist ideas. He liked ecumenism. And look at what Don Lambert said. God, that is very tight. Close friend said he's going to do something. If he's elected, he's made a pope, he will canonize ecumenism, which is quite unfortunate. Then in their funds, Helwegen, Abbot of Maria Lodge in 1918, who lived around between 1874 and 1946, maintained that the liturgy had become encumbered by fantastic medieval interpretation and excessive emphasis on the real presence. Look at this word. There's a lot of interpretation of the medieval area. Let's remove ourselves from Pope St. Pius V, from all the saints. St. Charles Borromeo that wrote the Roman Catechism. St. Charles Borromeo was a cardinal during that time. Let's remove ideas from ideas of St. Francis of Assisi. Those people were living in the Middle Ages, in the Dark Ages. St. Francis of Assisi, Tridentine Latin Mass. St. Dominic, 13th century, Tridentine Latin Mass. Most of the saints, most of the great saints reigned around that time, between 11th, 12th, 13th century and so on. So even before them, Pope St. Gregory the Great, that codified this mass and gave it first of all, that nothing ever changed again. He just only added a few words and disposed of our days in peace. The whole of Rome almost murdered him. He's a saint, though. God gave him this intuition to add it. But to tell you how the canon should not be touched, the lay faithful, I'm not talking about priests, the lay faithful almost killed him. Almost killed him for adding it. After that, nothing was added again. And that's how it has been today. So, Council of Trent did not change anything. He only canonized what Pope St. Gregory the Great did in the 6th century, 590 AD or thereabouts. He only canonized it. He only canonized it. That's what he only canonized what his predecessor St. Gregory, Pope St. Gregory did, Pope St. Pius V. He only canonized it in 1570 AD.
Please, can you explain canonize?
Canonize means to give it force of law.
Okay.
Rule. Like if you say you canonize something, it is a rule now that it can never be changed. A rule, canon, rule.
Yeah.
Canonize it, give it force of law. So if you say Pope St. Pius V canonized this mass in 1570, it actually means he gave it force of law. That none of whomsoever of the pastors of the church does not have any right to change it. Nobody, any pastor of the church has any right to change it. I will have a conference to the sacraments.
Is the Missae?
Yes. Okay, yes. Yes. Then I will read something of the stance of the Creed of the Council of Trent. If anyone says that the received and approved rites of the Catholic Church are accustomed to be used in the administration of the sacrament may be despised or omitted by the ministers without sin and at their pleasure, or may be changed by whomsoever of the pastors of the church into new ones, let him be anathema. This anathema means curse. For John the 23rd and Paul the 6th and all the popes after Vatican II, they are playing with the curses in this Council of Trent. Curse. Another word that Pope St. Pius V used was, "You shall be under the rods of St. Peter and St. Paul." So you don't change anything. You can. Pope St. Pius V codified it, gave his force of law that nothing again will be changed, nothing will be added or amended again in the mass. It will remain like that till the end of time. So if the Pope again, till the end of the world, till the end of time. And they thought they had a cause to change it along with Lutheran ideas, along with the Anglican service. That's what it is. The Anglican, the Lutheran, and the French revolutionary ideas was what is included in the new mass, which is quite unfortunate. So nobody, they don't have the right to change the Catholic mass to a so-called Catholic mass, which is not a Catholic mass, but rather a Protestant mass. A bastard right. That was Archbishop Missae called the new mass. It's a bastard right. It does. If it's bastard, that means it does not have God as his father. It does not please God. The new mass is a bastard right. It is. So we can't even tolerate. We can't even near it. We can't even near the new mass. I want to go there because I want to convert myself. I still want to start to convert. Oh, we tried. Even me, when I was going to the old mass, I was still going to. It's not really the old mass. The mass of all times. That's what the Netherlands mass is. The mass of all times. We are not using that distinction because of the conference. The mass of all ages. Canonized in the end of time, giving the force of God to the end of time. Pope St. Pius is the mass of all ages. So. Guys will think that if I go to the Novus, I can go to the society meeting, well, I'm going to. But we didn't work. You know, to work is divine intervention. Say divine intervention, nobody will leave Novus and come here and stop going here. Say divine intervention, nobody will come here. But what I'm noticing that those who are devoted to Our Lady will not see themselves going there. They will gradually know the truth and come here. That's the fact. Those who are truly devoted to Our Blessed Mother and Virgin Mary. The Romano Gaudini in Chicago, that reign around 1885 to 1968, ordained in 1910, spoke of the frequent sin of orthodoxy. Look at this type of nonsense. Frequent sin of orthodoxy. To be orthodox means to be Catholic, to follow the apostles. But this man, who was ordained a priest in 1910, I'm not talking about recently, in 1910, spoke about the frequent sin of orthodoxy that is in the Catholic Church. That the Catholic Church is too orthodox, too rigid, those kind of expressions. That's what he's talking about. Which is quite unfortunate. For this to be coming from the mouth of the Catholic priest. To tell you that the problems we are having now about Vatican II did not just start today. It started over 100 years ago. Remember the vision of Ordo the 13th, around that time. Okay, so let's continue. The Empire's Pact in 1884 to 18, who lived around 1884 to 1954, conducted liturgical experiments at the chapel of his monastery in Austria. Masses were celebrated facing the people. Do you hear this?
In the 18th century?
Yes. In this century, early 20th century.
Yeah.
In the 1920s. Masses were celebrated facing the people. He conducted liturgical experiments in 1920 during the time of Benedict XV. Of course, that one was sleeping. He lost his vigilance.
So the Jew is communicating.
You say?
The Jew is communicating that piece.
I'm not sure it was excommunicated. I'm telling you that I'm not even sure he was. But of course, they will be doing some of those things in secret because once the congregation of rights gets them, they will hammer them. The church was still very sound, even though Benedict XV was losing his vigilance. But the congregations under many cardinals, like Cardinal Mary de Val, was still the secretary of, even after St. Pius X died, the Cardinal that is a very holy and erudite cardinal that was still there in charge of things. So there's no way you hear this that is not. So that's why they did this intellectual experiment in the chapel in secret. But even though they did this in secret, some of those secrets later got out. People got to know. Yeah. One or two people must have it, but as of that time, some of those people, they were doing their experiments underground. When we say that St. Pius excommunicated those people, they went underground. Have you ever worked underground? They went underground. They went into hiding. Yes, from there, some of them were still doing all those their nonsense in hiding. So, but Pius Patch celebrated this mass facing the people as an experiment. And the ordinary was sung in German. The ordinary of the mass was sung, that's this in vernacular. Okay. And handshake was used to convey the sign of peace. Can you see the ideas of 1910, 1920, 1910, the other person 1910, this other person 1920? Can you see the ideas of who Vatican II are following? So there's nothing new under the face of the sun. These people were the ones that revolutionized the man, that they were really experimenting in their countries. It's kind of unfortunate that most of these experiments happen in French and in Germany. In France and in Germany, it's quite unfortunate. Then during the same period of the 1920s, members of the theological movement working with the youth movement in Germany and France, scouting, young farmers, etc., engaged in various theological experiments, dialogue masses at which all make their response, offering possession and grouping the boys around the altar for mass. Look at it. The theological youth groups. You see now, the idea of World Youth Day, all those things, it has been there. Some of them, some priests were only doing activism, action, youth action, try to make the youth to talk, let them say something, let them, they have to be involved. It's not only the master that should respond, everybody has to respond. Something was just like, well, everybody has good spirit too. Like I said, it's only in some masses that we should. But in low mass, no. It's dialogue mass. Even though Pope Pius XII somehow approved it, but he approved it for the so-called pastoral reasons. You see this word pastoral reason. Pope Pius XII was traditional, but there are many leeways he allowed that helped the Second Vatican people to still vote him, even though he's a traditional pope. There are many leeways he allowed, which was wrong for pastoral reasons. Let's just allow them. That's why you say when you say pre-55, what are you using pre-55? You see people will say pre-55. In the 1950s, a lot of things changed. Gradually, that brought about the new man. So the new man did not just come out of oblivion. It had a basis. All these people contributed to the thoughts of the new man. Pope Pius XII, being a traditional pope, canonized many things that approved many things that they used as a yardstick for the new mass. So he's actually, even though he's traditional, he's a progressivist, he's a modernist too. He can be classified along the lines of, because he's one that laid the ground for them. If he stood his ground like St. Pius X and did not allow any kind of compromise at all, he allows some compromise just not to please some people. Yeah. You know that because the liturgical movement was already being hijacked by modernists, and they were still traditional people, but because to please some of these men and to push him so I can please them a little bit, he allowed some things. But allowing all those other allowances came. And Vatican II now brought open the windows. Adionamento. You remember that word? Adionamento. Yes. Open the windows for more fresh air. According to them, only false Holy Ghost will come in. Because the Holy Ghost cannot, God is immutable. When we say God is immutable, that means God is unchangeable. God does not change. God is immutable. Just like the Mass is immutable, the Mass cannot change. It cannot change with the times to satisfy the present needs of the people, to assuage them, to make them happy. The Mass cannot do that. So we have to be very, very careful in allowing anything I have to do with error to creep into our mind and beg Our Lady for the grace. She's the only one that can help us. But if we have the true devotion to Our Lady, she will help us not to enter into former heresy. That's the truth. The true devotion to our Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary. Okay. So I will try and round up. I'll just round up. There is no time. The encyclical Mediator Dei, which was promulgated by Pius XII on the 20th November 1947, amongst other pronouncements, says authoritatively that the Mass is a true and proper act of sacrifice. The Mass is a public and social act, whether faithful are present or not. So that's the encyclical of Pius XII in 1947, Mediator Dei. The other encyclical, I think, is Missae Corporis. That one condemned, also condemned all those modernist spirits, like communism and so on and so forth. Then this encyclical talked about the Mass, that the Mass is a public and social act. Whether the people are there or they are not there, the Mass is still a public act. Because what happens is that most times, because of the so-called this, even in that time it was in, people started saying that people started giving this error that the priest must celebrate the Mass in front of people, so that priests no longer had their private Mass. It's a lie. When the priest is celebrating Mass, even alone, even without a Mass servant, he will respond to himself. He representing everybody. The Mass is for both the living and the dead. The Mass is a public act. For your information and for my own information too, the angels are there at Mass, so we should not deceive ourselves. The whole of heaven will come down at each man. It's a mission, but that's a fact. So it's a public act for the living and the dead. That's a fact. Heaven comes on earth during the Mass. So we should not deceive ourselves that we must be there. Our presence is needed. We must talk. So that the priest will hear us or something like that before we know that we have attended. Is a lie. But there were so people who were promoting the heresy that the people have to be active participation of the people. The people have to be there. It has to be a common meal. We have to come together at the table of the Lord. But it can still nonsense. So, but it's quite unfortunate because that is not the Mass. The Mass is a sacrifice and not a meal. The real presence of Christ is the transubstantiation. Everything about Catholic doctrine, everything about Protestant doctrine is ruled out because it is not Protestant, it is Catholic. So the Novus Ordo Missae, in all truthfulness, is a Protestant, a bastard rite. And we should have nothing to do with it. If we that know the truth now go to the new Mass, we commit mortal sin. That's the truth. So we should not actively be involved with the new Mass, with the Novus Ordo Missae. Joseph Jogman, like I said, the German man, composed what we call the Missae Solemnia, Mass of the Roman Rite. Around he lived around 1913 to 2003. He wrote this book in the 1940s. Then he laid out what the so-called idea of conception of Mass should be, which they borrowed. Most of his thoughts that he wrote in 1940, they borrowed from the new Mass. Then Louis Boyer wrote the book that we call Liturgical Piety. And in this book, the real presence, he talked about the other real presences. There's only one real presence, transubstantiation. Real presence of our Lord in the Eucharist, in the Blessed Sacrament. There's no other real presences. He talked about other real presences. I don't want to go into detail. Other real presences, in order to remove the idea of the true real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. Then he also talked about the supper table. He also had a disdain for Thomism and non-scholastic theology. So that other theologies of other modernists was pleasing to him. Everything about Thomas Aquinas is sumo theological. It has philosophy and what we need to know. Sumo theological, the book of theology and philosophy, most of it is based on St. Thomas Aquinas. Albert the St. Augustine then. Yeah. But he removed every idea of Thomism, every idea of scholastic theology, he removed it from him. So he had what we call a disdain, he had a hatred for anything about St. Thomas Aquinas. which we base our this, he had his name for it. And this is the person that wrote what we call liturgical piety in the 1950s. Even we that are seminarians, traditional Catholic seminarians, we are very watchful of even what was written in 1930s, 1940s. We are very selective because some of those things were imbued in modern science. Catholic doctrine, or the small poison, modern science. The Catholic does a small poison, modern science. St. Pius X went against it. Because modernism, you don't bring a drop of poison. That's why you see, sometimes I see when Vatican will say they put the divine mercy into the index of forgiving books. It's not because the whole of the divine mercy messages or the prayers are bad. They said even the congregation of the right that put it under index of forgiving books say that many of the prayers are good, are very sound, very nice. One or two things was wrong. That is why they put it in the index and they say people should not use it. She equated herself, Maria Foster equated herself to a blessing of the and many other things in visions that were wrong. That is why they put it. Not that the prayers are not good, don't quote me wrong, bro. They are okay, but because of there is one or two drop of poison they put in there, just like this Louis Goya and this Jobman and all those things. Their books very Catholic, but has some Protestant ideas. Like sometimes you might read through it, you might not notice. Very tactful people, very intelligent people. But when the Pope, the Holy Office of the Inquisition, when they see it, that's what we call the Congregation of Doctrine of Faith now.
Yeah.
That's what we call the Holy Office of the Inquisition before they change the name. They just want to
the Holy Office of
the Inquisition. That means things to be Inquisition. And if everything and your thought is wrong, they dump it. It's a hard statement. They reduce everything about Vatican II. They don't water it and they change it to the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith. But that's why it's supposed to be the Holy Office of the Inquisition. They threw it to the index of forbidden books. They threw such books that have small error. So those thoughts of these two men were majorly accepted during the Second Vatican Council and shaped most of the things we are having now about the new Mass. Then we have the doctrinal changes. PR reform of Commission of 1948 brought about what we call the reforms brought about the experimental Easter Vigil in 1951 and then the simplified rubrics of 1955. Now there was what we call, before all these new Mass came out, they experimented an Easter